swing that door open, and I see my buddy John, and he has one phone on his left ear, one on his right ear. Every phone we have in that little apartment is ringing. And I leap over, and I pick up the first phone that I can get my hands on. And I take an order from this woman, and she orders a 12-month subscription to the Cigar of the Month Club. And I had to stop, and I had to ask her, "Are you sure, lady?" I hung up the phone. I looked over at my pal John. I said, "It looks like we're going to be in business for at least a year because we've got a 12-month subscription we have to fulfill." Recognizing an opportunity and seizing it. These phones rang for days and days and days. So I took that same letter and those glasses, and I sent them to radio stations in New York, and Los Angeles, and Detroit. And sure enough, all these radio stations were having me on the air, and it wasn't costing me a penny. Now, when you're a true innovator, when you're someone who really understands sales and marketing and how business works, you try to take a good idea and make it better, right? Is that safe to say? You try to make it more profitable or more efficient. And I was looking at this, and I said, wow, this really works with the radio. But how can I make it better? What's the next step? And I thought to myself, if this works with radio, the next step is probably television, right? I figured Oprah Winfrey and I could sit down on her couch and have a cigar together and talk about what a great gift this would make. So I modified that letter that I had written, and I went to that local costume shop, and I bought 50 pairs of those Coke bottle glasses that I could get my hands on, and I sent these packages out to every single daytime talk show on television. And about a week after those went out, I didn't get a call. 2 weeks went by, and I did not get one call from that wave of packages, and I was getting nervous. I thought something might have happened. Maybe UPS didn't deliver these right. And it was Wednesday or Thursday of that third week, and I finally got my first call from those packages that went out, but it wasn't quite the call that I'd hoped for. I got a call from the producers of the Danny Bonaduce daytime talk show. You guys know who Danny Bonaduce is? Okay, he may be in jail now, I don't know. But I'm going to share a story that doesn't leave this room, but people in this room will appreciate it, because sometimes you've got to do what you need to do to market your products. Is that safe to say? So the producers called me in, and they said, "Bill, we're going to talk about having your products on our unique Gifts for the Holidays show." They were doing this show where they were featuring all these great gifts for the holidays. And I go to the studio, and I sit down with these producers, and they immediately start negotiating with me. They said, "We'll put your products on our unique Gifts for the Holidays show, but we want you to do our eligible bachelor show in return." Right? This is where I had to sell my soul to the devil. So I immediately counteroffer these producers back. I said, "I'll do it on one condition. I want to bring my buddy Carson on the show with me." Carson was an eligible bachelor at the time. "I want to have someone to share this wonderful experience with." And they agree. And I leave the studio, and I get in my car, and I pick up my cell phone. This is when cell phones had cords. And I call up Carson. I said, "Carson, have I got some great news for you, pal? We're going to be on this nationally syndicated daytime talk show, and they're going to be fixing us up with these models from Paris." This is what they had told me. I mean, how do you say no to that, right? So he's in. He's on board. And the day comes, we're supposed to film this show, and they send a stretch limousine to pick us up. Now, I'd never been in a limousine until that day, and we're riding over to the TV studio, and we're drinking champagne, high-fiving each other, thinking, this is as good as life gets, man. We're going to be meeting these models from Paris. It's going to be great. And I get to the studio, and I'm there about 20 minutes, and I realize why they had sent the limousine to pick us up. You see, they were concerned that if we got there and found out what the show was really titled, we'd be more likely to leave if our vehicles were there. They changed the topic of the show, conveniently they said that day, to "Dateless and Lonely for the Holidays." Carson's running for the door. I'm grabbing him by the back of the shirt collar. "Carson, you have nothing to worry about. None of our friends watch daytime television. I need to get my products on the unique Gifts for the Holidays show. You got to help a brother out here, man." And he agrees. I don't know how I was able to get him to do this, but we go through what is still to this day the most humiliating experience of our lives, dateless and lonely for the holidays. It gets better. They happen to air that particular show Thanksgiving Day. No one's working. Everyone's at home watching daytime television. It was the highest rated show in the 6-week run of the Danny Bonaduce show. But they held up their end of the bargain, and they put my products on the unique Gifts for the Holiday show, and then I got on Good Morning America, and I got on CNN. And within the first 30 days, I turned those phone lines on for business. We had over 1,000 members getting these packages sent to their home. And then Father's Day came, and we got 4,000 getting monthly subscriptions. And then the next holiday season came, and it was 8,000, and then 12,000. This thing kept going and going and going. And then the world changed. The dot-com boom started to take off. You remember you turn your radio on, and every time you listen to an ad, it was .com this or .com that. And people were changing the way they bought gifts. They were falling out of love with this of-the-month club concept. And as a true sales and marketing guy, I said, wait a minute. The world is changing around me. I need to take the blinders off. I need to react and adapt to what's happening. Most people, they go through life and they do things the way they did them the year before, and they get in that comfort zone. I said, I can't do that. And I slowly started changing the way I sold my products to my customers. Started selling to casinos and resorts and country clubs. And thank God I did that, because my competitors, who were in the beer of the month and the wine of the month, they laughed, and they said, we're going to do things the way we did them all these years, because we've been very successful for many years. And 12 months later, those guys wound up filing for bankruptcy. But when we made that shift, I had to change a lot of the people who were working inside answering the phones into sales people. And I learned a very valuable lesson about sales from a young lady, this girl who worked for me. Her name was Jennifer Davenport. And she had never been an outside sales rep before, never really been in marketing. She was an office manager, but she wanted to get into sales. And she was very ambitious. And she was going after the Harrah's casino chain. Obviously, there's a lot of Harrah's casinos around, and she kept calling on this buyer, calling on him, and never made any progress. And then she decided to live in the present. And she went in one day on that sales call, and she paid attention, and she listened, and she looked at the surroundings. And she noticed that on his back credenza, he had this shrine to his dog. His pictures and all these crazy things. And she left there that day, and she went and bought $10 worth of dog treats in a little basket and said, hey, thanks for seeing me today, and sent this package to this buyer. She wasn't trying to bribe him or anything. It was $10, $12, whatever it was. And she wound up getting the business. The guy called her up and said, I'm going to give you a shot. Not because you gave me these dog biscuits for my dog, but that you paid attention, to detail. And I know that you were able to see that, and you're going to take care of my account. And a lot of the salespeople that I've come into contact with, they're so focused on the next sale or where they're going. They never stop and live in the present. They never pay attention to what's around them and actually hear what the customer is saying. And I thought that was very telling. So that company did very well for many years, and I sold that company about a decade ago. And just as I had sold that company, I was developing real estate, I got the most random phone call of my life. I got a call from a friend of mine from her mother, and her mother was a talent agent in Chicago for kids. And she called me up and she said, there's a new show with Trump, and they're looking for sales and marketing people. And if you win, you can become his right-hand man. She said, what do you think? I said, it sounds kind of interesting. Can you shoot me an email and I could take a look at what this is all about? And she quickly said, no, I can't. I made you an appointment on Wednesday at 1 o'clock. You better be there. She was a tough lady. You didn't want to say no to her. So I go to this meeting, and I sit down with these producers from Hollywood and start explaining the concept of The Apprentice. You know, we're going to be marketing products each week, and there's 2 teams, and a winning team and a losing team. And you know what happens when you lose. What happens when you lose? Fired. So they had 250,000 people apply that year. They were able to get 250,000 applications. And they narrowed it down to 50. And I was part of the final 50, and they flew us all to Los Angeles, and they put us through a battery of testing. These reality shows are crazy, right? You have to take an IQ test and a psychological test. Then they sit you down with this FBI background interrogator to make sure you are who you say you are. And I had to take the most thorough medical exam of my life. To this day, I still don't know why. It's kind of crazy. But then after all those meetings, I got pulled into a room with a guy named Mark Burnett. You guys know who he is? He's created all these shows. Why is this room much louder than this side of the room? Were you guys out late last night or something? Man. What's that? Oh, the Canadians. Ah, they warned me about the Canadians. Okay. So Mark Burnett pulls me into this room, and he offers me the last spot to compete. He offered me the alternate position to compete on The First Apprentice. And I immediately accepted the challenge. It was an opportunity that I wanted to take advantage of. And he said, Bill, there's just 2 conditions. One, you have to wrap up all your business in Chicago and be in New York. You've got 2 weeks to do it. And the second condition is you cannot tell a soul where you're going to be for these 13 weeks. This was the first season of the show. Everything was very secretive. He said, but don't worry. I've got some of the best producers in Hollywood, and they're in the room right next door, and they're going to create a story for you to tell people where you're at so no one's hot on your trail. I thought that was a little strange, but I said, okay. So I got up from that meeting with Mark Burnett, and I went into the room right next door, and I sat down with the best producers in Hollywood, and they went on to tell me that my story to tell people was that I was going to be relocating to Havana, Cuba, to buy tobacco fields, and I would have no contact with the outside world. These are the best producers in Hollywood? I'm a U.S. citizen, man. I can't go to Cuba. I thought that was funny, but what I found more amusing is my buddies actually believed the story. I thought I used to hang out with a sharp group of guys, but boy, was I wrong. So I go to New York, and I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to take on the big business of Manhattan. And we get saddled with our first task. And our first task, I can guarantee that each and every one of you have done, if you're worth your salt. Who can name the first task we did on the very first Apprentice? Lemonade. Good man. We had to sell lemonade in the middle of Manhattan. And I'll never forget that moment because I look up at the heavens and I think, dear God, no one will ever take me seriously in the business world again. I'm in a suit and tie selling lemonade on Fifth Avenue. It's 100 degrees outside, and this stuff is not fit for human consumption. I'm done. I'm on the board of a publicly traded company. This is over. But then the tasks got larger, and they got larger, and they got a lot more complicated. And your skills really had to be honed, and you had to be able to operate on very little sleep. We were getting 2 to 3 hours of sleep a night with no days off. And slowly but surely, they started to fall and fall, just like in life, just like in any competition that we face day after day. It's who is the strongest will survive. And then before I knew it, I looked to my right and I looked to my left, and there was only one other person still standing. And it was my luck. This guy had his MBA from Harvard. So it was the sales guy from Chicago versus the Harvard MBA, and we had to battle it out in the final round, and we went toe-to-toe. And then in front of 30 million people on live national television, it was the highest-rated show on all of television that year. Trump made his decision, and he hired me on, and it was a great night. It was a lot of hard work and sacrifice that had paid off, but my celebration was short-lived because as soon as he said, you're hired, I got whisked away, and I had to go on a 2-week tour around the United States doing talk shows. Jay Leno and Ellen and Larry King. And, I thought to myself, where were these people 15 years ago when I was stuck doing the Danny Bonaducci show? But then I finished that, and I finally made my way back home to Chicago. And I remember sitting on my couch in my family room, and it was the first time I had experienced any peace or quiet in literally months. And I remember thinking to myself, why me? What separated me from the pack of all these people who wanted to win? You had 250,000 people who applied. I was the last guy standing. And I think first and foremost, I thought like a sales and marketing guy. And I knew how to be an individual on a team. It's very important to be a good team player, but you also have to be an individual on that team. And when you're a team player, you always understand the importance of strategy, right? Everyone in this room, I hope, has a strategy for how they're going to achieve their goals this year. And I utilized on The Apprentice something a little bit different. I utilized what I call my marathon strategy. Anyone in this room ever run a marathon? A couple Canadians we got running marathons. Okay, here we go. Well, when you run a marathon, your goal is to cross the 26.2 mile marker. Oh, this woman's run 7 marathons. Thank you for the numbers. But your goal is to cross the 26.2 mile marker, and most people, their bodies aren't designed to run 26.2 miles. But when many runners start that race, they envision crossing that finish line. But what they do is they set little goals. They said, all right, I'm going to get to 26.2, but I've got to get to mile 5 and 7 and 12. And by the end, they're saying, just get me to the next telephone pole and the next telephone pole. But what that does is it makes that larger goal a lot more manageable because they're able to realize little successes along the way. And I did that in The Apprentice. I had 13 different business challenges operating in 2 to 3 hours of sleep a night. My first goal was, dear God, please don't let me be the first guy to get fired. That's the worst. But then I wanted to get to the upper half and the final 4 and the final 2, and I was able to cross that finish line with the victory. I broke it down. I made it a lot more manageable. But I think there were three main reasons why I was able to win this business competition. And I think these are probably the reasons why everyone in this room